Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be talking about astrology and the death of rock and roll legend Eddie Van Halen. Now, he has died due to succumbing to throat cancer. I'm sure it was a long battle with it. First off, I want to offer my condolences and prayers to the close friends and family members of Eddie Van Halen if they do happen to see this. So, anyway, I'm going to talk about some natal placements and transits that may have been tied astrologically to his passing. Now, I'm looking at his chart. Well, first thing, he's Sun in Aquarius. He's also Moon in Aquarius as well, Mercury in Aquarius. A lot of Aquarius energy, a lot of eclectic, innovative energy. He has the Sun in his third house of communication in Aquarius. I'm sure there's a lot of focus on ingenious ideas and thoughts, and he was somebody that was obviously very renowned musician. I'm surprised to hear about this, given 65 years old I think he was, but it was cancer. So he was throat cancer, I should say. And there's some things I'm looking at. He has a Libra ascendant, and Neptune is conjunct his Libra ascendant. Neptune on the ascendant can give, in some cases, some weakness and dissolving and dissipation of the vitality. The person may succumb to some kind of disease because Neptune is associated with diseases. It's also associated with weakness. It could diminish the vitality and energy of the person. Because keep in mind that the ascendant is the physical body, and given that Libra is associated with the lower back, the endocrine system, and the kidneys as well, it wouldn't surprise me if there were some issues, physical related issues connected with those matters. Now, um, another thing I'm looking at as far as his chart goes, interestingly enough, right at this time he has transit Moon in Gemini in the 8th house of death, and I'm a Moon in Gemini person, and I'm talking about his chart. And the thing about it is, the one thing I'm looking at in this chart as far as the throat cancer is that he does have on his 8th house cusp of death, he does have Taurus on it, and Taurus rules the throat. So it's not surprising his death was attributed to something Taurus related, associated with the throat. And another thing is that the ruler of the 8th house of death falls in his 2nd house, and the 2nd house corresponds with the throat in astrology. Keep in mind, every house in astrology does correspond and correlate with a part of the physical body, and the 2nd house is the house of Taurus in astrology, and it is connected with the throat and neck area. Now, another thing that I'm looking at as well in terms of his chart, he does have one of the rulers of the 2nd house, which is the throat neck area, which is connected with the throat and the neck. It's conjunct his 6th house cusp. I'm sorry, so there's no surprise in a way that there was some issues. There was some health related issues connected with the throat. Uh, Another thing that I'm looking at too is that looking at his 4th house cusp of the end of life, he does have Aquarius on it, and for one thing, he may have been exhibiting a lot more of his sun sign qualities at that latter or end part of his life, such as the very, just expressing a lot of uniqueness, ingenuity, or being very unorthodox, unconventional, selfless, eccentric, those kind of qualities. And he has the sun in Aquarius conjuncted, so it could shine the light on those issues during that time. But another thing, and also a strong focus on Aquarius related matters at that end or latter part of life, such as exhibiting selflessness, perhaps a humanitarian energy, and also too Another thing I'm looking at, one of the rulers of the fourth house of the end of life, Uranus is conjunct Jupiter, and Jupiter can be associated with Cancer. And anyway, he also has Pluto in Leo in the 10th house, so that's an indicator of a death that's going to gain a lot of notoriety and recognition. Pluto in Leo by itself, it's not, even though it's a generational planet, can sometimes manifest, I believe, in a death that could garner a lot of attention and notoriety. The fact it's in the 10th house, it even increases that propensity because the 10th house is one that 10th house can be associated with notoriety and recognition. It can be, some cases, Pluto can be a dramatic death, and then being in the 10th house of one that can gain some kind of notoriety and recognition. So anyway, another thing I'm looking at is that transit Sun was in his 12th house at the time of his passing. When you have the Sun in astrology, can be associated with life, vitality, and energy. And when it transits the 12th house, sometimes that could be an indicator of the life passing, because the 12th house is the house of limitations, restrictions. It's a house of endings, so it can indicate the end of one's life, and the limitations associated with life, with energy and vitality. Keep in mind that the Sun also is in its fall in Libra. Uh, Another thing too is at this time he also had transit Mercury in his first house. In his first house, Mercury can be associated with communication. Scorpio is the planet of death, and it's transiting the first house of the physical body. So anyway, I'm just looking to see if there's really that much to look at in terms of if there's anything in this chart that is, as far as transits and natal placements go, that can be tied into his passing. Well, another thing that I'm seeing as well in his chart. Now he does have transit North Node in Gemini in the 8th house. The North Node, when it's in transit, can be about issues one may have to confront and address. And being in the 8th house, it's not surprising or shocking that this would be something that would be associated with death. And being in Gemini, something that was going to be newsworthy, that was going to be in the news and communicated about strongly, and I'm sure very eloquently as well in a number of blogs. Now, another thing that I'm looking at as well is that the transit South Node in Sagittarius was close to his natal Venus at the time of his passing. And when you have when the South Node is involved in transit, it can be about issues one may be going away from. And the fact that it's hitting Venus, Venus can be associated with what we enjoy. It can be music, and because Venus can be associated with the arts. And the fact that you're having the South Node in Sagittarius in close proximity to it, that could be about going away from some enjoyment or even music. In this case, maybe music. I don't know if he was still entertaining or he was still performing or not, but if he was, that would be an indicator of going away from music, which he played with, I'm sure, with a lot of exuberance and enthusiasm, given that we're talking about Sagittarius energy, and with a lot of enjoyment, I'm sure. So I mean, those are some things to look at as far as natal placements in this chart and transits that may have been tied into his passing. It's just terrible when you hear about people that pass away, and especially when it's at a younger age than average. I mean, 60. I think he was 65 years old when he passed away, and that is way going way. I mean, way too. Way too early. And Cancer. He had also at this time he had transit Mars, making in Aries, making what I call loose opposition to his ascendant. And transit Mars is in his sixth house of health, and this could be about combating some kind of illness. Maybe it came on very aggressively, given that it's Aries, and opposing the ascendant could be taxing on the physical body. He also had at this time, I believe it was, he had transit Chiron in the sixth house or very close to it. Transit Chiron in Aries, and you're talking about issues. I mean, transit Chiron in Aries by itself can give issues with the headache or fevers or some kind of inflammation or problems with the face or skull. And I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he had some issues that were associated with this at the time of his passing. So anyway, there's really not much more for me as far as anything in his chart that I'm seeing that might have been tied in uh, into his passing, as far as transits and natal placements may go. And it's just a terrible, I mean, a terrible thing to happen. We lose some, legendary musician. It was very surprising to me. And again, offer my, I offer my condolences and my prayers to the close friends and family members of Eddie Van Halen. And it's the only other thing I could say, I'm looking at having Aquarius on the fourth house cusp. There may have been some. It wouldn't surprise me because you're talking about the latter part of life he was in. There may have been some issues with the ankles or shins, circulation. Maybe it could also be something with the lower legs. Maybe, I mean, I would say some enigmatic condition, but something tells me that that's something I would seriously doubt. And having Aries on the cusp of the sixth house by itself can give health issues that could be associated with the head, the face. It could be inflammation, or it could be issues like with headaches, or even the brain or the eyes. Anything that could be Aries related. So anyway, people, well, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment. Until next time, people, Edwin Learnard saying stay well.